Hello, 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 everybody. I'm Pedro.
And I'm Meredith.
And this is Gritty Reboot, the grittiest show about reboots there has ever been.
Yep.
And this week we are talking about reboots once again. And we have gone back to J-horror and a film that I always appreciated from back in the day. Pulse, or Kairo as it's sometimes known. I hope I'm saying that correctly. This was remade. This film was from 2001. It was remade in 2006, I believe, starring Kristen Bell here in America under the title Pulse.
Yeah.
And it's largely forgotten and has two even more forgotten sequels. But I think this first movie is one I'm happy that we're covering because it's a little gem. Not perfect, but it's a little gem.
It's not perfect by any means.
You were less enamored with it.
Yeah.
But let's get into it. You were struggling to keep up with the subtitles, and because you take vigorous notes throughout the film. And so having to read subtitles really interferes with that ability to take notes.
And the subtitles were terrible.
Yes, this was maybe the worst subtitled film I'd ever seen. And I don't necessarily mean the translation, which was okay. But what I mean is the subtitles were just white text. They didn't have like a little bit of black behind them, or sometimes it's known a drop shadow. And that lets white text be seen on anything, basically. On the whitest text, they'll have a little black outline so you can see it just clearly. It works great. And this movie didn't do that. So anytime the white text was actually so white, it looked too bright, right?
Yeah.
It looked like it was overexposed.
And it was
sort
giant.
It was sort of what it felt like. It was very large and it was very poorly done. And by the way, we didn't just rip this like off the Pirate Bay or find this on the internet. This was Peacock's official copy.
Yeah, and I'm going to say right now, I struggled with a lot of the names because a lot of the times when you're watching a foreign movie, usually you'll get in the captions the name of the person speaking.
You will. Yeah, and that tends to help.
That didn't happen.
Yeah, they didn't do that. There were a lot of times we would see a piece of text and they wouldn't translate it.
Not to mention like
the Forbidden Room. The first time we see someone look at something that says that, they didn't translate it.
Yeah.
So the only reason I knew it is because I was looking up a character name for you and I saw that that's what it was supposed to say in the synopsis. So a very strange decision by Peacock to do that. And it didn't help things at all. And like I said, it made things a little more confusing for you trying to keep the characters straight.
Not to mention surnames, in Japan are kind of used interchangeably in this movie. So, for instance, what was that guy's name? Ryusaki.
Yeah.
Is also, what is his name?
Kawashima.
Kawashima,
yeah. And that's the thing.
Sometimes they call him Kawashima. Sometimes they call him Ryusaki.
Yeah.
So in my notes, he's Ryusaki, but I don't know. It's just difficult.
Yeah, it very much is. It was one of the things that just didn't really help with the experience. However, I was still able to be really captured by the movie at certain points. As I said, I think the movie kind of goes to dizzying highs, in my opinion, and really settles in the middle. There's no low lows in this movie. You know what I'm saying? There's no point where this movie just drags and it's boring and dull. It never does that. It can be ponderous and a bit slow, but there's always something brewing in this movie.
It's very slow.
Yeah, it can be slow, but it is interesting because it has something that it wants to say.
Yeah.
And while it certainly can take its time and it can be a bit heavy-handed here and there, I really like an ambitious movie where not everything is really literal. Things can be a bit abstract, and you have to work for what the meaning is necessarily behind it. Also, there's some very creepy imagery and fantastic sound design in this movie.
Yeah.
I did want to mention, this movie is directed by Kiyoshi Kurosawa, and I didn't realize that I'd seen a couple.
No relation to the Kurosawa.
Yeah, no relation to that guy. Actually, I didn't check, so I'd assume not.
No, he's not.
Okay, I didn't check. I didn't want to make that call and then find out.
It was in my.
I didn't want to find out. Have somebody point that out to me on TikTok or anything like that. But I realized that he actually directed another movie that I had seen not too long ago that I went to go seek out because, of all things, I had played the video game of it. Remember when I played that Japanese game, Sweet Home?
Yeah.
Yeah, Sweet Home was a middling Japanese horror movie, and that's all it is. It's okay. It's nothing special. It's just a haunted house flick. But the game is something particularly special because the game was designed by Shinji Mikami. And Shinji Mikami is the guy who would go on to make Resident Evil Basically the entire
Resident
Resident Evil
Evil.
series. Yeah, that's what he is famous for, and this was the first game he ever worked on. And you go back and play Sweet Home, and like all the elements of Resident Evil are there on the NES, with the exception of the pre-rendered graphics and everything. Like even the door opening sequence, the way you have to store items and everything like that, put them in a box, like everything about that, it's Resident Evil, but it was laid out in that game. Matter of fact, Resident Evil was supposed to be a remake of Sweet Home. But they couldn't get the rights to it, and the rest is history. I'm sure that whoever owned the Japanese rights to Sweet Home is probably kicking themselves for that mistake.
Right?
Yeah, because that was it's still one of the biggest franchises in gaming even today.
Yeah.
Like Resident Evil's still huge. But I just wanted to mention that weird little factoid. Like I went and watched this movie after I played the game. I went and watched the movie on YouTube off a YouTube rip, which had much better subtitles than the Peacock film we just saw. But like I said, I found the film enjoyable, if altogether a little generic, and I was surprised to find out it had the same director. But I certainly can see a few of his hallmarks in the movie. But with that being said, well, let's get into it. Let's talk about Pulse. Pulse kind of sounds like Silent Hill at times,
Yeah.
which I really dig. I really enjoy.
It's got some unnerving music.
It very much does. It very much does. I enjoy. Also, and I guess we'll get to it there. But the whispering, I think, maybe was the most unsettling thing. Yeah, yeah, that was maybe the most unsettling thing at all.
The
As it-
loud whispering, too.
Yeah, and it reminded me of, like I said, we talked Silent Hill. There was one of my favorite areas in Silent Hill was the whispering room. Like you get in there and it's just someone, and he's never clear. He's unintelligible, but you can hear him. And I remember at the time playing that, I was like it sent a shiver down my spine. Like I felt like he was right behind me, even though there wasn't really surround sound back then. But it really did feel that way. And oddly enough, I had the same feeling watching this at times. I found this film to be quite creepy.
Yeah, it's very creepy. It
Yeah.
has a lot of creepy visuals.
Very much so.
It's one thing I liked about it the most is its visuals.
Mhm.
And I also like the message of the movie, too.
Yeah, I think we can certainly agree on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I think we both really enjoyed about this movie. We like when a horror movie's about something.
Yeah.
We don't like when killers just randomly walking through rooms and killing. It's fine, whatever, but it's cool when a movie has a little meat to its bones.
hmm
And this certainly does.
Well, we start with some old dial-up sounds. And if you're not familiar with those sounds, I don't know what to tell you.
I didn't queue up any dial-up sounds, but I'm probably putting it in editing right now so our younger listeners can hear a little bit of what that magic was like.
Yeah.
And that was basically the information going to your ISP back then via a telephone line.
Mhm.
And it was something you just got used to, and when it was gone, I never thought about it again until an old movie brings it up like this.
We start on a ship in the middle of the ocean. We see a woman. She's looking out at the waves, at the horizon, kind of forlornly.
Yeah,
There's a storm coming.
we don't necessarily get any setup to this. It's just an image that we're shown.
Yeah.
We don't really understand it just yet. It's just a woman on a boat because we don't come back to this image again for a while.
And then we jump to a woman who dials someone who hasn't contacted her in about a week.
Mhm.
She's pretty upset.
So
But this is Taguchi she's talking about.
yeah, this is Michi. She's calling Taguchi.
Yeah,
This is a colleague she works with, and they're gardeners, right?
I believe so. They
Yeah,
have the
they're
plants.
they're working with plants on a rooftop in Japan. So this is a bit of a cultural element I wouldn't know anything about.
But
But
they have discs that they need. And,
yeah, well, I think he's just a computer guy.
yeah.
I think he should. But there is a disc that they're trying to get from him. He's working on some sort of computer program. I'm not really certain what was cutting edge back in 2001 or 2000 in Japan for them to be working on. But they were working on Windows XP. It was cool to see that in Japanese.
A man comes in who I believe is Yabe.
Yeah, Yabe. That's the male employee who works there. They have another guy who's just the boss, but he's not important.
He asks, "What's wrong with Taguchi?" They talk about a disc that they need, and we're now watching a woman riding the bus.
Yeah, there's
And
this
that's
really
Michi.
abstract shot of Michi on the bus, right?
Yeah.
It looks rear projected.
Yeah,
Like it's drawing attention to itself how strange it is and how isolated and alone Michi is. in
she
the shot.
is.
And that is like Japan is like a ghost town in this entire story, right?
But you don't catch on to that until later on in
That's
the
very true. That's very true. But it's just one element that's starting to set the theme of the film already as she heads to Taguchi's house and eventually ends up going inside.
Yeah, she goes up to Taguchi's apartment. She looks through his things, trying to get clues on where he is or why he's not answering the phone. And then a shadowy figure rises from behind a plastic curtain. It's Taguchi, and he's surprised to see Michi.
Yeah, he certainly didn't think anybody was going to come by. And Michi is a little, I guess, taken aback by the situation, you know?
It's like, why haven't you been answering your phones, man?
Yeah, because I guess she sort of expected that he would either be, I don't know, with somebody or doing something particularly important or just out of town. But it appears he's just been hanging around his apartment.
He hasn't been very social lately, so he understands. But he's acting weird. But he says, help herself to the disc, and she does.
Yeah, she grabs that and she's still having a conversation with him as he goes away, and she's talking about the disc and the certain things around his apartment.
Yeah.
And she kind of realizes that, oh, he's not here anymore. He just went into another room.
Yeah, she's like, what's the file called?
Yeah.
Numerous stuff like that.
And when she goes to search for him, she makes a truly shocking discovery. She basically opens these curtains and walks into the main room, and she finds that he has hung himself.
Yeah.
Just within a few moments.
Yeah.
And I mean,
very
she's
quietly.
Yeah. And a lot of things in this movie are done very quiet. This is not a movie for jump scares.
No.
If you don't like jump scares, you'll probably really enjoy this film. And yeah, I think this really sets the tone of the movie pretty well, I think. You know, I think it's a creepy image, him just hanging there silently. You know, I think anybody could be very creeped out by the way it's presented.
Yeah. Well, she's obviously pretty upset about this. In fact, she goes to eat lunch with some friends, which I imagine is Junko.
Junko, yeah, she goes to eat friends.
Yabe.
Junko and Yabe are her friends that she works there. As I said, there's one other person they work with. As far as I know, he's just the boss. He's not given a name. So, but that's it. Just Junko and Yabe, they meet together and they talk a little bit about the situation.
Yeah, they talk about the suicide and how horrible it is and that they didn't really see it.
Yeah, they just didn't really know it was going to happen. And I think that's just the way I think people generally are when someone they're close to or they know commits suicide.
They set about looking at the footage of Taguchi.
Mm-hmm.
And they watch the surveillance footage from Taguchi's apartment. They see a figure in one of the computer monitors.
Yeah, they find this footage of him standing in front of his monitors, and he's just standing there, completely motionless. There's no movement in him at all. And it is a creepy scene. And they do look at one of the monitors, and they see like a face, and we get this zoom in on the face.
Mm-hmm.
And it's non-diegetic. It's just for us. Like they aren't seeing this. We're seeing this, the audience. And we see a ghostly yet undefined face. In one of the monitors. We
also see in another monitor the apartment being basically mirrored.
Yeah, basically he has the same image up that we're looking at at that moment in time. So, and
a little strange.
It is. It's odd. It's possible, but once again, just odd.
Michi is making some tea while watching the news. All of a sudden, the TV starts acting weird.
Yeah.
It gets to be pretty jumpy, but she did just witness a suicide.
Yeah, and I think when things start going wrong like that, I think you can automatically assume that something is weird that's going on. And I think she feels a general strangeness from the world. You know, she doesn't realize it, but whatever is occurring, she's already a part of it.
Yeah.
And she doesn't really know it yet, but she is. And she's already beginning to feel some of the effects of what is going around the whole city.
This is where we meet the other guy in this story, Ryusaki, who's also called...
Oh, yeah. So we're going to meet. I do want to mention this movie does have two storylines that really don't meet until the end. And so we have Kawashimi or Ryosuke.
Kawashimi.
Everybody calls him Kawashimi. And his storyline is, like I said, separate. He's just a guy who stumbles upon this website. And once again, I want to mention that Peacock did not translate this for us. But the screen says, "Do you want to meet a ghost?"
Yeah, he's feeling a little lonely. He just wants to connect with some people. So he gets the internet. He's setting it up and he gets on this website immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very creepy.
Yeah. He's just giving these images of people just sort of in their apartments alone, not really engaged. Like they're not interacting with the computer. They're not doing anything like you'd see on a webcam. This isn't like early Omega or anything like that. These people are just almost ghostly as they are, just there.
Yeah, there's a guy swaying ominously. There's others staring right at the camera, but not saying anything or moving.
Yeah.
People just acting strange in general. He falls asleep, but his computer comes right on.
Yeah.
And it comes to life on its own. Dial-up tones once again. Some footage comes on the screen, and it looks like a dead person with a bunch of writing and blood behind him. which it couldn't necessarily be a dead person. It could be a living person just being very still, because that's kind of the theme of
that is
these
sort
strange
of thing.
videos.
I do believe these are all living people at that point.
I put dead in my notes.
It doesn't, oddly enough, it doesn't particularly matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter. But yeah, there's a guy with a bag over his head, and he has, I believe it's "Help Me" written over and over again in blood. Once again, we didn't get that translated.
Yeah, we didn't.
We didn't get that translated. I had to look. I found that in the synopsis later on. One of the recap videos I saw let me know that was supposed to be on the wall. Thanks a lot, Peacock. Thanks for nothing.
Yeah.
$7 for an NFL game, and you can't even give me decent subtitles afterwards. It's my ass, NBC.
He turns off the screen, then heads to a place with some computers because he's a little unnerved.
Yeah, and also, he's not a computer guy.
Mm-mm.
He's just not. He has a nice machine, but he doesn't really understand how it works or what the hell he's looking at. So he ends up going to computer lab to get a little more explanation.
Yeah, he goes to the computer science wing of this university that he's at. He asks someone using a computer if a computer dial-up can dial up by itself, and if he wants to see a ghost. And the guy's like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah. No one's really taking him seriously, so he has to talk to somebody else. And this is where we meet the other character in his storyline, which is Harue.
Yeah.
And Harue is a young woman, college-aged, and she is a very different person than Kawashimi.
Yeah.
She is plugged in all the time.
Mm-hmm.
She is in the world of computers, on the internet a lot. She understands that. And because we get to meet her a little bit, we understand that she's already a little bit lonely because of this.
Yeah.
Which is something that Kawashimi is particularly not. Like, yeah, he uses a computer, but he's still going out and doing things. You know, we see this after this scene, right? Like, he's going to arcades and doing fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's not really part of your notes, but I'm just saying, we see him out and interacting with the world. We do not see Harue ever do that.
Mm-hmm.
Ever. We only see her interacting with computers and Kawashimi.
She gives him some help.
This is really funny because she has to tell him how to do a bookmark, right?
Yeah, he asks about the troubling website, and she's like, okay, you need to take a screenshot of the image. And he's like, screenshot?
Now, I say this now, I'm surprised how many people don't know how to take a screenshot today.
Yeah.
It does come up. I asked somebody to take a screenshot of their screen and send me that so I could see the problem. I'm like, how do I do that? I was like, you know how to take a screenshot? I was like, that's pretty basic stuff.
Yeah.
But he didn't know then, and she told him basically to bookmark it, and if that doesn't work, you screenshot it.
He takes down some instructions, and off he goes.
Yeah.
Then we have a mother bantering with her teenage daughter. I don't remember why that scene comes up, but we don't see it again, so.
Isn't this Michi with her mother?
Is it Michi with her mother?
Yes, this is, because Michi's mother is the only.
Michi's acting like a teenager.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. Okay. So that wasn't clear, but now it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yabe gets a phone call, and all that person says is, help, help.
Yeah, a very ghostly whisper. Help me, over and over again. And he doesn't necessarily know what to make of it, but you can tell it creeps him out.
Mm-hmm. He goes up to Taguchi's apartment looking for clues, and he goes into the area where Taguchi basically committed suicide. He shines a light on the wall where Taguchi's body was, and there's a shadow.
Yeah, there's a shadow on the wall, this remnant of where he was. And as he looks at it, when it cuts back to Yabe and cuts back to the wall, he's there again. Yeah. We see Taguchi, and it cuts back again. So we're never really certain when we get the reverse shot, because Yabe doesn't necessarily react. And when we come back again to the wall, it's the stain again. He is not there. So we don't know if that is a ghost. We don't know if that's Yabe's memory. We really don't have any concept. And you know what? The film does not have to explain that. It's fine. I just want to mention that like right now, because it doesn't really matter. It's just a mystery.
Yeah.
Trust me, this movie would be way, way worse if somebody just sat down at the 30-minute mark and just explained everything that was going on.
Yabe ends up going through a door that has red tape around it.
And this will be one of the themes of the movie as we start to find out a little bit about the red door. He does find a little booklet that says Forbidden Door. Thanks again, Peacock, for not translating that for us. So he understands that there is something strange about it.
He finds a chair and a weird, like, bloody red painting of some sort behind it. Then he turns around, and the scariest part of this movie is this part right here. We see his POV. Yeah.
And it's unclear to him as it is to us for a brief moment, because you just look at a dark wall, and even an eagle-eyed viewer, it would still take you just a moment for your eyes to lock on just to the right side of the frame and realize there's someone standing in the darkness.
Yeah.
They're barely lit. You could only see some of their legs. and they just stand there, motionless. They don't move, they don't pulsate, they don't glow or anything like that. They just stand there for a moment. And the music begins to kick up at this moment. And this is the first time we've really heard any kind of creepy music.
Yeah.
And it begins to come up. And this scene is just the shot of the wall, a reverse shot of Yabe. That is all we get. We get his reaction and what is occurring. And then the ghostly figure steps off the wall and begins to move in this unnatural way.
Like almost like a dancer.
Yeah, and she was a dancer. It's who he cast, and very deliberate how he had her move. And yes, it is how a person can move. There's no effect to it. They're just they're a little pale is all the effect has.
She's almost like walking in some spots, but in slow motion.
Yeah, it does feel like
she
she's
kind of
like she's at 240 frames and the rest
moves
is
her
at
body in a
24.
certain way.
Yeah.
It's very spooky.
There's this moment when she comes close to the light and she stumbles and puts her face clearly into the light. We see her. And she stands up in this other unnatural way and begins to move at Yabe, who is frozen in fucking terror. Like he realizes at just a moment she's coming at him, and he backs over the couch and falls over.
Yeah, he falls behind the couch.
And he desperately looks underneath the couch to see where she's at, and of course, he doesn't see any feet. He doesn't see any feet.
Yeah. So she slowly creeps over the side of the couch.
There's this great shot.
It's her face.
Right as we're looking under the couch, we get this over the shoulder of the ghost, and the hands are gripped onto the couch. And we know immediately he's in deep shit. And she slowly pulls her face in this reveal. There's no jump scare. There is no ghost face. There's no weird expression or anything like that. It's just her blank face.
Yeah.
Just expressionless face. And Yabe looks right into her eyes and screams in utter terror. And the scene ends.
And that's it.
And this is probably my favorite ghost reveal in the history of cinema.
Yeah, it's
I can't think of a time a ghost appears where I was just unsettled, because I can remember watching this movie for the first time all those years ago, and I remember like watching it, and when it was over, I looked down and I had goosebumps, like my hair standing on end of my arm. I really was incredibly creeped out by the scene, and that's not something that usually occurs to me, a pretty seasoned cinephile and horror fan. So I have to just give it up to the scene. If you haven't seen it, and you've never seen this movie, by all means, go to YouTube and just watch this one scene. You'll immediately understand what the hell we're talking about.
Yeah, it'll make you want to watch the movie.
Yeah, you'll probably want to sit down and watch the rest of this movie, because there's more scares like this in the movie, even if this is the best one.
Yeah. Michi and Junko talk. Michi goes outside and she watches a woman tape up a door with red tape.
Yeah, so this is the first time that Michi can see someone doing something in this regard. This is just a random person. So it lets us know one thing. Whatever is occurring, it's not just with our characters. It's spreading all throughout Tokyo.
We're back with Kirishima, and he had to get advice about the program. He's following the instruction he was given. There's some weird imagery that shows up of the same, what I thought was a dead person.
Yeah,
it was not really a dead person.
Yeah, we're seeing more of what we were exposed to in the previous scene. And he does try to follow Harue's instructions. He's unable to bookmark it. Once again, I don't know what it said, but it was clearly the Windows X icon to let us know that it's not going to happen. So he couldn't bookmark it, and the screenshot button didn't work either.
Yeah.
So he was unable to do either of those things. But he continues to watch the video.
Yeah, and it's this guy that comes closer and closer to the camera.
He's got like a trash bag on his head.
Yeah, something on his head, a bag of some sort, a black bag.
And he's just moving towards the camera, like he's in like a swivel chair, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just moving towards the camera in that very smoothly. There's no jerky motion to it at all. We don't get anything until he kind of gets too far in front of the camera and we can't see him.
Yeah.
And then he reemerges coming up from underneath the frame and begins to take the bag off. And immediately Kawashima's like, nope, I'm out.
Yeah.
Which is one of the things I appreciate, right? Because he's like, nope, disconnect, off. And because that's what you should do. And it tells us that Kawashimi is a normal person.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't want any part of this. He just happened to stumble onto it. It does not affect him in the way that other people are affected by this curse or whatever it is.
Kawashimi runs into the same woman, which is Harue, who helped him with the website before. She offers to come to his house, and which is really nice.
Yeah, yeah.
And he asks her some questions, and she's very patient with him. She goes to his place, trying to figure out what's the spooky website's all about. We're back with Michi, and she is talking with someone about Yabe and how concerned she is about him because he's apparently not shown up to work.
Yeah. So immediately the problem they have with their other coworker, they're now having with Yabe.
Yeah.
Like he just hasn't shown up to work, and it is concerning them as she talks to Junko about this. And as they discuss this, Yabe does eventually come into work, but wants nothing to do with his coworkers.
Yeah.
Like he's been gone for a few days and won't talk to them or offer an explanation.
Yeah.
Very strange.
Mishi goes to see Yabe, and he's basically despondent.
Yeah.
He talks about seeing a face in the forbidden room, the room with the door with the red tape.
Yeah.
Yabe says he's cold, and he leaves.
And that can be physically cold or just emotionally.
Yeah.
He's both.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, like he's a shell of a human at that point, which is, I believe, how this thing works.
Mishi goes outside and witnesses a woman leap to her death, and it's a really good kill.
This is a
scare.
Yeah, and we'll bring it up next week. It's not done as well in the American version, but what is great about this scene is you don't see it coming. You're not expecting it. The scene is not set up to where it's specifically framed where you can see something in the background, right?
Yeah.
It's just a wide shot. It's nothing special.
Just a wide
it's
shot.
just a wide shot. I want to mention that.
You have to look at the small, tiny figure at the top of this like industrial area.
Yeah. There's basically like a factory, and she's on top of I would say like a silo.
Mill or
something like that. Yeah, like a mill. And she just climbs on top of this, 50 to 100 feet in the air, climbing on top of this, and without hesitation, just walks off.
And you see every bit of it. Normally, when you see a shot like that, the camera will pan away.
We'll cut to a reaction shot,
there's
and you'll hear the hit. But boom, you just one shot,
everything.
You see her hit and bounce.
Yeah.
And then we cut to Miche's reaction shot, and she's horrified by what just happened.
Yeah.
And honestly, this is one of the few times that we see someone else out in the city. Like, I don't know how, but they made Tokyo look like a goddamn ghost town.
Yeah.
And we don't really, as a viewer, you can't really comprehend it, but that problem's getting worse and worse as we go along.
Mm-hmm. This is when I started noticing that something was up with the... Yeah. It's almost like a virus.
Mm-hmm.
Kawashimi is now at the library, and he sees a woman and asks for her help. He kind of flirts with her in a way. She says, "Can I show you something?" He agrees, and they look at the screen with some balls of light. She says there's ghosts.
Did you not realize that was Haruwe?
Was that Haruwe?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow, you were really bad about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was Haruwe. And this is one of the movie's more interesting scenes, is what she does is she presents this computer to him, and to him it looks like a screensaver. And it's just these dots kind of going back and forth. And the whole point is they're supposed to get close to each other, but when they do connect, they immediately fly to the other end of the screen. They go as far apart as they can. And one of the dots sometimes goes away. And this is basically the movie. They look it over and over again. She informs it's not a glitch. This is just how it's designed to work. And it is a scene that, once again, I think on face value does not seem very important. But this computer monitor is basically the curse in just a 2D shape, right? Mm-hmm. This is basically what it is. When two people get close, one of them is dealt with by the curse.
Yeah.
And that's sort of how it works. And we get introduced to it here. I think this is a nice little scene, and it also establishes that Kawashimi is trying to get a level of closeness with Haruwe, who is kind of unfamiliar with that kind of contact, right?
Yeah.
Like she just, even later on when there's opportunity, she still doesn't want that level of closeness with another person. And I think that's very interesting.
No, because when she's taken under later on in the movie,
spoiler,
she talks about loneliness.
Yeah.
And that she's not really bothered by it.
Yeah, and I think in this scene we start getting that set up specifically where she talks about loneliness and how that works, and it doesn't necessarily bother her. She expands upon it more, but this is the first time we're really introduced to the concept that she is very much alone and okay with that.
She gives him her number. He goes to the library area again and thinks he sees a ghost, but when he goes towards it, no one is there.
Yeah.
He just sees a shadow.
That's very true. So it's just kind of this dark figure, right? Just an outline of a person. And he goes to find it, and it's not there. And this introduces us to her Haruwe's graduate student friend, Yoshizaki. And Yoshizaki is probably the only kind of info dump we get. But he's not necessarily a reliable narrator.
Yeah.
Like, he kind of lays his theory out on these ghosts, right? That the afterlife or whatever is full. It has a finite amount of space.
Mm-hmm.
And they're spilling out into the real world. And he's just dumping this info to Kawashimi the same way he's dumping it to us. Like, Kawashimi doesn't have more info than we do. So he's like, okay, man. I mean, he kind of accepts the face value because he just saw a ghost, but he's the only person to kind of give us any information. But it's not true information. It's just his theory. It's just his theory and what he thinks is occurring.
We see a man ask for tape, I guess at a construction site, and the guy gives him some red tape, and he starts taping up all the windows and doors.
Yeah.
So we see that whatever's happening is seeping out into everybody else's life.
This is a problem that's spreading all throughout Tokyo. There's no escaping it anymore.
Yeah. We see some footage of a taped window and a dark figure come out of the shadows. Junko goes to look for Yabe.
Yeah, so we switch back to the other storyline. Yabe has been despondent, and so Junko wants to get to the bottom of it. She's drawn to him.
Yeah.
She feels that he's in need and goes to him.
Michi also goes to look for Yabe and thinks she's found him, but it's just a shadow and somebody whispering help.
Yeah. So, yeah, we have more of this theme of the movie, and we get more of this creepy whispering as well.
Junko takes all the tape off the door, the red tape.
Yeah.
Michi goes to find Junko. She sees she went through the door with the red tape.
Yeah, she goes into the forbidden room.
She finds her terrified on the floor. Michi also sees the ghost in the corner and bravely grabs Junko to get her away.
Yeah, so we see that Michi is also not affected by the way that some people are as well by dealing with the ghost in the forbidden room. She tries her damnedest to pull Junko out of that room. Yeah, she's literally grabbing her and going, come this way, and eventually drags her friend out of that room.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a ton of effort, but they're able to do it, but they're really unable to secure the door, which they leave the portal open.
Yeah. We're back with Kawashimi. He sees a website with a shadowy figure walking across the frame. Haruo talks to him about death and ghosts, and he isn't really that scared. He's kind of a brave person in this movie. He's the voice of reason.
Well, that's the thing. Like the curse he's not immune to it, but it affects him much slower. It's just not. He is not alone like some of these other people are. He likes to get out into the world.
Yeah.
So whatever effect that these spirits, these entities have on the world, it doesn't have the hold on him that it has on Yabe or Haruo. It just doesn't.
Yeah, she's basically very pessimistic, talking about life and death and loneliness and all this stuff.
Yeah, she really goes into it about loneliness and all this, and they talk a little bit more about the theory of where these ghosts are from.
Yeah,
and it leaves this unsettling thought that like when you die, it's not the end of the toiling.
Yeah,
like you're going to toil for the end of till the end of existence, and there's something really scary about that idea.
Yeah.
Like you said, when you die, that's the end of it, right? You're like, you die of cancer. That's it. You're not just going to suffer from cancer till, the sun eventually nukes the earth, but that's sort of what is happening here. They realize that there is something else when you're gone, and there's no escape from the mortal coil to some extent.
Yeah.
You don't have a body anymore, but you're still there. Like you still feel, and you still feel alone.
Either way, he's not trying to have any of that death talk.
No, he really isn't. And we see him kind of shrug off some of these more creepier elements.
We're back with Junko and Michi, I'm sorry.
Michi, yeah. And Junko is descending quickly.
Junko has her head covered in a blanket. She's totally
pale.
Destroyed.
Yeah, like the curse is affecting her the same way we've seen it affect everybody else. Despite Michi's attempts to try to bring her out of it by staying close to her, giving her food and everything like that. It's just not really taking.
She goes to make coffee or tea. I'm not sure which one.
Doesn't matter.
But Michi loses sight of Junko and then turns around to see her shadow turn to dust. And that dust goes throughout the room.
Oh, yeah. This really is a very cool and creepy shot. Like right over Michi's shoulder, we see her phase into the wall, disappear, go into the other world, basically. And when we see this, Michi turns around and is sort of horrified by what she sees. And then like the shadow breaks down and just becomes ash all over the room.
Yeah. And
it's like mocking her, basically, like flying all around her, the remnants of what used to be her best friend.
Yeah. And in fact, she's so upset that she calls her mother, but no one answers.
Yeah. It's spreading.
Yeah.
It's spreading everywhere. Can't get a hold of anybody anymore.
We're back with Kawashimi.
And I believe this is the scene where he's at the arcade and no one is there, right?
Yeah, he's playing a game in a casino that looks very empty.
It's an arcade.
It's an arcade.
There's no casinos there.
Well, it looked like slot machines.
Well, that's an arcade. That's an arcade there.
Okay, well, slot machines here is a casino.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying there's games. He's playing games.
Yeah.
The rest of the people playing. Yes, there are slot machines there, Those are pachinko machines, by the way, not slot machines. That's not gambling like we look at it. That is gaming. That their arcades never died there, but they've always had pachinko machines for older crowds, and that's what other people are playing there. You just play pachinko machines. You don't win money from them.
Either way, he sees a ghost.
It's not important, but the idea is that this place is completely deserted. Yeah. And there was a scene earlier in the movie. This was probably the most normal scene in the whole damn movie. There's regular sound and everything like that. You know, the sound design of this movie, which I'll get into right now, is oppressive. Because when we're out in the city, we hear early in the film the life of the city, the sirens, you know, people moving around. You know, we hear a lot of what should be in a city. And the voices and the people that are in the background go away as we go further into the movie. And all we can hear are either these whispers or distant sirens, indicating there's some disaster on the horizon. But yes, he does see a ghost walk through this entire place.
He leaves. He goes to see Haruo. And she's like bashing at some plants.
Yeah, Haruo is in bad shape at this point. Yeah, whatever is affecting everybody else is really playing a number on her as well, sadly.
They decide to leave, just to go somewhere, anywhere, doesn't matter. They get on the subway. It's pretty empty. The subway suddenly stops.
And there's no one around anymore. We don't see anybody else.
Yeah.
Ever.
And Haruo freaks out and escapes. And I guess she goes back to her apartment.
Yeah, Haruo just runs away when they get to that stop, and Kawashimi's never able to really find her. He walks out into the darkness and doesn't. Because when we cut to the next scene, it's Haruo at her apartment.
Yeah, she's looking at the creepy website. She's got multiple monitors pulled up.
Yeah. Because she had shown him these multiple monitors before, because in the earlier scene when she was trying to say, I don't know if these guys are dead or alive. I don't know if it even matters. But she only has the one monitor brought up. And in this one monitor, as a callback to the opening scene and scare, we see the same image that she sees.
Yeah, the guy with the writing behind him.
Yeah.
And he's taking off his mask. And then once he takes off his mask completely, he shoots himself.
Yeah.
And then Haruo notices that she's being watched.
Yeah, we see on her monitor is the shot directly behind her.
The closet door is open and completely pitch black.
Yeah. And Haruo, at this point, there is no fear. There is only loneliness that's left.
Yeah.
And this is a sad, sad scene. Because she stands up and she slowly walks over to the entity. And she can never see the entity. Maybe she can, but we don't see it.
Mm-mm.
And she wants a level of closeness, this ability to feel something from him. And she attempts to embrace this entity. And I find that interesting because she embraces nothing. And that's the point. Because earlier in the subway, Kawashimi was begging for that contact. I will stay with you. We can live together. It can be fine. But she wasn't interested in that. This loneliness it is all she is now.
Yeah.
And she embraces this ghost, and it's the last time we see her.
Kawashimi
Kawashimi
goes to Haruo's apartment, breaks in, but no one is there. He goes outside and raids a machine. He runs into Michi in her car.
Yeah, so once again, Tokyo is completely devoid of light.
Yeah.
Except for the sirens, right? There's sirens and like smoke in the background.
Yeah.
Something horrible is happening, but we can't see it. It's something that is just not there to us, right?
It's in the environment, but we can't see the environment.
And listen, I can't tell you 100% if it's actually there, if they're hallucinating. I can't tell you if Kawashimi and Michi are dead and this is the afterlife. I don't know, but it's not important. We're just taking what the film is telling us. And he sees a car broken down there, and he goes into it, and our two storylines finally converge. Michi is there.
Yeah.
And he helps her repair her vehicle.
Yeah. He fixes her vehicle. They hop in the car together to search for Haruo, because she's got nothing better to do at this point.
Yeah. So that he assists her in searching for Haruo.
Yeah, they go to an abandoned factory. They spot Haruo with something black on her head.
Yeah, and like I said, this is the last we see of Haruo, because at this point, it is not her anymore.
Yeah.
She is completely gone. Whatever humanity was left in her, it is only the loneliness and that crushing of her soul that is left. She walks opposite from where Junko and Kawashimi are at and slowly pulls off the bag that's on her head. The same one that we've seen in this video time and time again. Yeah. And we see Kawashimi is aware that something horrible is going to happen. And he tries to even get closer, but it doesn't even matter. Before he can even say anything, before he can even protest, before he can even try to save her, She pulls out a pistol and blows her brains out.
Yep.
She shoots herself right in the head and ends it. And he runs over to her, anguished, and tries to grab her, but it's over.
Yeah.
It's over. And that's sort of the point. Like, there's nothing you can do.
They leave and go back to the car, but they're out of gas. So he goes to get some, which is back inside the factory.
Yeah, he has to go back inside this factory and begins pumping.
He pumps the gas can, and then right behind him
A forbidden door.
Forbidden door with red tape around it, and it slowly opens. And
he's drawn to it. He has to go in. And what I like about this, Kawashimi is not, he's not scared. He goes there and sees the ghost, and he's like, you know what? I don't fucking believe in you. This is all bullshit. And he has this great scene where the ghost is doing all the creepy bit. Kawashimi doesn't care. He's had enough. And he's like, I know you're not real. And he goes up to him and grabs him. And he grabs him like a regular person. This is the exact opposite of what just occurred with Haruwe. Yeah. This ghost is real, and he's there. Unlike what we saw before, the loneliness hasn't gripped him. The ghost had to show him that he really is there.
He's corporeal.
Yeah. And it has an effect finally. Finally, it has an effect. And we see, the way this curse works is you're drawn to someone. You want to save them. And when you go to save them, they die, they disappear, they go away, and then you have it. And this is how the cycle is now transferred to Kawashimi.
He fights with himself a bit. He's like, okay, all I have to do is go towards it, and it'll go away. So like you said, he goes towards it, he touches it, he freaks out, he gets away, but the figure comes closer and closer to him, all while saying the words, help, help. And forever is death is eternal loneliness.
Yeah. So we've been introduced to this theme over and over again, that this technology that we love so much, that we value, that makes the world so small. And it really does. One of the best friends I have, it lives in England, and I talk to the guy almost every day, and I think about that making the world small, but I've never met him. Mm-hmm. I've never shaken hands with him. We've never shared a beer together. I only know him via the internet. Mm-hmm. And it's not the same as knowing a real person.
No.
And that's what this movie really tries to get across, is this technology that we love so much has separated this world, has made us lonelier. I talk about this a lot with, there's a crushing issue of loneliness today in America. There really is. People just don't get together anymore. And some of it is just due to scheduling and things like that. But
we also work 40 plus
most
hours
people have two jobs a lot of the time. So it doesn't help with that. And also, our technology is geared towards being apart. I've told you before, one of my most cherished memories is playing video games with friends, all together in one room, having a great time. And you can't do that anymore, can you?
Yeah.
All multiplayer is built to be online. And how do you do that? By yourself.
Well, we used to play couch co-op.
Yeah. Games. And we cherish the 5 or 6 that come out, every decade.
And all those games we played. We loved it.
Yeah.
But they just don't cater to that.
Yeah, they dropped it out of Halo and stuff like that. I know that's off topic, but you understand the point, though. Over time, they moved away from a communal experience to this online-only experience that they think that we want, but it really is just made us all lonelier.
Mishi goes looking for him and notices the door left open.
Once again, a character has become attacked by a ghost, and the other character immediately knows there's danger and goes to him. This is how it works over and over again. Just like the monitor, just like those dots circling each other. Once they come close, the other one has to go away.
She finds him and they leave quickly.
Yeah, he pulls himself out and is staring at a shadow, a dark spot on the ground.
Yeah.
We don't know what happened. We never find out what happened. We assume that ghost faded away right there. We don't know. But she does get him out of there, and they get the gas and continue on their journey.
This is where they see burnt out vehicles, street lights in the road, empty streets.
This is finally a dystopic Tokyo. We see that things are really fucked.
She pulls over and starts crying. He wakes up and wonders what she's doing. She tells him she's worried and asks if he wants to go back to the remains of Haruwe. They get into a boat. They see a plane go down.
Yeah, and oddly enough, this is a pretty decent effect for a Japanese film in 2001. This plane just on fire crashes in the distance behind them and lets them know the world is truly coming to an end.
And she gets the keys to the boat, and they're off. Mm-hmm. And then we're back with her on the ship, the same ship that we started the movie with.
We circled right back to the intro again. We understand what that meant. We come back into here, and I think where a lot of movies would deliver a happy ending, and maybe the American movie does deliver one here, spoiler, but that's not what we get. what we get is desperation. What we find out on this boat are just the people who were able to make it out. And they're trying to boat to South America to find other humans?
So to me, I took it more positively. I thought it was a positive ending because she's not, even though she sees the shadow of
Kawashimi.
Kawashimi
Goes down into the boat and he is laying against the wall.
Yeah, and he disappears.
And this is probably like the most serene disappearance of the film.
Yeah, it's very peaceful. She looks at it very peacefully. There's the guys talking about signals that they're going to go towards and seeing if there's any life. To me, it's a very hopeful ending.
Yeah, there is a level of hope in this ending. But once again, one of our lead characters who we've been with this whole movie, he doesn't make it. He just dies. And then there's no reprieve for him. He tried everything he could to save people and he ended up dying himself. So to me, I think that does make the ending a bit of a bummer. But yes, there is some hope. But I think it's such a desperate hope. Like they're just going to sail across the world hoping to find other souls that aren't affected, other people they can communicate and connect with.
That's what I would do.
And we don't know if they ever will.
That's what I would do.
No, I'm not saying that the human spirit is to fight on. And that's the opposite of what this curse brings to you. It takes that away from you. But they're going to keep fighting until they just can't. Until they just can't. And that ends Pulse.
Yep.
And I think it's a haunting film. I really do. I've mentioned before, far from perfect. But the things in this movie made me think about and the themes of it and the cinematography that is just there, I think is incredibly impressive. I think this is a movie that really has to be experienced and watched. And I think if you've only seen the American movie, and we'll talk about that next week, obviously, you really owe yourself to sit down and try to find yourself a DVD, try to avoid the Peacock version, get a DVD or Blu-ray of it, and just watch this movie from start to finish. And even though this film was from 20 plus years ago, the things it has to say about technology still resonate today.
And I like its message about depression.
Yeah, it very much is a great way to talk about the effects of that technology separating us and the depression that it has on humanity's soul. And this movie has interesting things to say about it. And I really think should be watched, a lot more by people, in honesty. I wish more people talked about this movie.
Well, there wasn't too many facts I scoured the internet, and there just wasn't a whole lot. There probably is in another language, but I don't speak Japanese, so I can't tell you. But here's what I got. The film's Japanese title, which is written in kanji, translates to English as Circuit. So that
is how the film is sometimes known.
Yeah.
Circuit, yeah.
A large number of scenes in this film were shot from windows. He employs a distant, near voyeuristic photography, choosing to film in wide and medium shots.
Yeah, and you really get a sense of that. Like I said, there's close-ups in the movie, but for the most part, the movie is really wide.
And then the next one I have is a quote. It's from the director. He's speaking to Reverse Slot magazine in 2005 on the distinct differences in how ghosts are depicted in Japan. He said, "They are not violent ghosts. The ghosts just show up and sit in a corner of the room to tell you how vengeful they feel. If they don't attack you, then the best you can do is figure out a way to coexist with them. I find the idea that one just has to live with this thing much more terrifying. You have no chances of running away or fighting it. You're stuck with it forever."
Yeah, I like that element of whatever this curse is, like the finality of it. Like there's no escape. And we talked about a little bit about that with American Werewolf in London last week. Unlike the other movie, there's no escape from the werewolf curse.
Yeah.
You get it and it's over. This is almost a nihilistic sense of that film in that way. And this movie is a little bit similar in that respect. Like there's nobody even talks about how to stop this thing, right? It's just happening and you try to survive.
Reviews. This got a 3.5 user review, 76% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Pretty good.
6.5 out of 10 on IMDb.
Not so bad.
I pulled a 1-star review.
Okay, let me hear it.
This wasn't a horror movie, just a horror movie. Now, I've seen and liked The Grudge, both US and Japanese versions, and Audition, so don't think I'm in some way biased against Japanese horror films. This film is not just worth the time, and it feels like a long time. I watched this with 5 friends, and after an hour and a half, one asked, "Does this movie end?" The plot is weak and contradicting, and the depth of characters is shallow. I felt no sympathy for the characters as they were apparently compelled to give up on life. The film was slow, barely managing to build suspense and usually cut away, often disjointedly, when a suspense did try to build. When any shocking moment did occur, there was no thrill, just a sense of relief that something finally happened. I did like some of the cinematography, such as the scene through the city at the end, as it often worked well to set the mood, but unfortunately it wasn't enough to salvage the story. I'm not looking for blood and gore for a horror movie to be good, but it has to be more than just bleak and despairing. Anyone who actually thinks this was scary might consider therapy and stay away from more frightening fare like Disney's Black Cauldron or Bambi.
Well, he needed a more physical presence in his movie to be scared.
I also wanted to include this little snippet from a review that I found fascinating. He talks about frequencies, and he's an engineer, a sound engineer.
Okay.
The core part of the explanation is that they found frequencies they didn't know existed. There's no such frequency. A frequency is a number. Any number is a potential theoretical frequency. Even if you consider that frequencies above the Planck frequency may not be physically possible, it would not be possible to even approach that frequency with the equipment they had. Once you get above a particular frequency, you're now dealing with an optical spectrum, visible light not able to be produced by metal antennas and satellite dishes. And if the ghosts occupied them in possibly high frequencies and tapping into them meant they could now occupy lower, physically attainable frequencies, then there would be no safe zones, just because there's no cell reception. They could occupy anywhere visible light could be seen, so there would be no spaces. I thought that was interesting because
that is
it's kind of what the movie is about
to some extent. Yeah, and they talk about that a little bit more in the other version that we'll talk about next week.
Yeah,
frequencies and everything like that. They do talk a little bit more about that, but and certainly they do talk about the cell phone signal being a big part of that movie, which is not really a part of this movie. That's the reason I mentioned. I was like, well, he's thinking about the remake, which is fine. That's okay. But that is an interesting idea to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that you went and pulled that up.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting how he looked at the movie being a sound engineer.
Yeah, that was a good way to take a look at it. Use your expertise to kind of break down what they were doing.
Yeah,
I like that.
Oh, well, that's all I got.
Sadly, Ebert did not review Pulse. He did review a lot of Kurosawa's other movies, but he did not review this one. If he did, I couldn't find it. I was unable to look it up. But I do want to mention that it's not uncommon that he wouldn't. A lot of these movies, what happens is, and what happened to this one is, Miramax bought the rights to this movie and basically tried to hide the original film until they got the remake up and running. But it took them so long to get the remake up and running, and we'll go into that next week, that by the time they did, I think Shout Factory or Magnolia was able to get the distribution rights to the original film and able to put out the DVD. But I'm pretty sure Roger Ebert didn't take the time to go pick up a J-horror DVD and watch it in that point in time. Yeah. So he probably never got a chance to see this movie. He did review the other film, and we'll talk about that next week. But he sadly, like I said, did not get a chance to review this movie. I think he would have given a good review. I think so.
All right. Well, that's that. Our social medias.
Yeah, you know that. Gritty Reboot, GrittyRebootcast@gmail.com. That's the email address. Or you can look up Gritty Reboot at TikTok or on Instagram. That's probably the best way to get a hold of us.
Yeah. Like, subscribe, do all that jazz.
You know the drill. If you made it to this point of the podcast, you probably like what you were hearing. So thank you.
Yeah.
And we appreciate it. So please give us a review. It means a lot to us. We're just two people trying to get our opinion out there. And we just like talking and chatting with everybody. So yeah, that's it. We just like talking about them. So, a good review means a lot more to us than it is going to mean to Joe Rogan or somebody like that. Yeah. We appreciate any interaction we get to have with fans or anybody that would appreciate the work. So we certainly can't express the gratitude if you take the time to give us a review, whether you just write one or you just give us a star rating. We appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
So with that being said, guys, we will see you next week for Kristen Bell and possibly a little bit of Wes Craven's Pulse. And with that, guys, hopefully we'll catch you on the flip side.
Adios.